Hey there, this is a message for any listeners who might be able to access the North American Midwest. We're going to be appearing at the Ohio Game Developers Expo. That's right. Gary and I are going to be doing a talk about Dark Souls. That is currently scheduled for 1 o'clock on Saturday, November the 7th. At the Kole Center in Columbus, Ohio. That time is subject to change, so watch their website and our social channels for details on that. We're going to be doing a little bit of meetup stuff around the event up in Columbus and then down here in Cincinnati. So watch our social channels for that again. You can find information about this conference at ohiogamedevexpo.com. Once again, that is the weekend of November the 7th and 8th at the Kole Center in Columbus, Ohio.
Some of our landings were desperate adventures. We are now prepared to meet the inevitable counterattacks with power and with confidence.
My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Kole Ross.
And I'm Steve Gaynor.
And you're listening to Bonfireside Chat. It is a hunter's favorite.
Yes, and this week we are talking about the unseen village of Yahar'gul. And as you heard, we are joined by Steve Gaynor from Fulbright.
Hey there. Hello. By the way, so that wasn't me. I'm recording from the Fulbright offices, which are very near the train tracks in southeast Portland. So you may occasionally hear some a little bit of a addition of some.
I really hope that was a soundboard, like that was your Arsenio Hall-esque. Like,
yeah, it sounded like a soap opera organ sting.
I wish I was that much of a weirdo that I was just like, all right, what I'm going to do is when they introduce me, I'm just going to hit this air horn because that's cool. Wrong, it's not cool. Anyway, sorry about the train, but coming to you from the Fulbright offices. Excited to talk about my experience with Bloodborne.
Yeah, well, we're super excited to have you here. I mean, we're big fans of the work you guys have done, and excited about what's coming up.
Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And
yep.
At least Gary is local, so it's cool to do stuff with other Portland folks. So yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it was a real pleasure to meet you. If somehow you could crystallize all the amount of time that I've spent talking sugar about both Minerva's Den and Gone Home, it would be embarrassing. Like if I would presented that to you, like if it followed me in like I was that old lady in Labyrinth and I just had this huge burden of all of the praise, it would have been undignified, because the people who listen to our shows can attest that we've spent a lot of time talking sugar about that stuff.
I have a thing that you signed up on my wall.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
One of the Tacoma prints.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you for grabbing one of those.
Yeah, we're both really looking forward to it, and we're both big fans. So
great. Yeah,
super cool to have you on the show.
And obviously, our work has so much in common with the Souls games that it's just an obvious fit for me.
I assumed you guys are going to move in a real dark direction.
With
Tacoma and the kind of crushing futility of.
We've been working on a really good "You Died" screen. Yep. It's just going to be ruthless.
Yeah, constant fail states. Can you speak a little bit to your history with like Souls and how you got into Souls and specifically Bloodborne?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it was kind of a long road for me in that I bought a PS3 because my friend Chris Remo was talking up Demon's Souls, and I was like, all right, I'll buy this PS3 and I'll play Demon's Souls on it now, and then I'll just have a PS3 for when Last Guardian comes out. So owned. But I played Demon's Souls, and I was intrigued by it and respected it, but it was like, to me anyway, so inaccessible. Like a lot of it was like the hub structure was just sort of like, you just kind of have to randomly find the section to go into that you're the right level for. It just felt like very, it felt more anti-player in a way than like the successive games did. So I played some of Demon's Souls, but I never really made very much progress into it. And then when Dark Souls came out, people were raving about it, and it sounded like a really great progression from Demon's Souls. And I picked that up, and I've played a lot of it. I've played multiple characters up to a certain point, but the game just always ended up wearing me down. Like the first time that I quit, it won't surprise you, was at the archers in Anne Orlando. I was just like, yep. I'm like, all right, you know what? Game, you win. Good job. You beat me. So I never finished Dark Souls, though I've put a lot of time into it, and I've played through up to that point or close to it multiple times. And so when Bloodborne came out, Bloodborne is the reason I bought a PS4. So good job selling hardware from software for Sony. But Bloodborne, I did play on launch day, and it's the first Souls game that I can report that I successfully actually completed it all the way through, and it was really satisfying. And I really loved the like very kind of self-indulgent Victorian Gothic aesthetic of the game, and the focus on like increasing the pace and having more aggressive gameplay, I thought was a really cool direction for the series. So kind of by default, I guess, Bloodborne is, I don't know. I mean, I guess I don't know if Bloodborne or Dark Souls is my favorite of the series. I never played Dark Souls 2, but Bloodborne I certainly kind of got the full experience of, more so than any of the other games in the series that I played. So I also had the cool experience of, I was streaming Bloodborne for a lot of it while I was playing it the first time through, and it felt like a good balance because the people in the chat that I was streaming with, they weren't like giving me like they weren't guiding me in a way that it felt like I was cheating or anything, but they did kind of point out some secret areas that I probably never would have found on my own along the way. So I feel like I really got to see a full kind of spectrum of what the game had to offer on my first playthrough by virtue of sort of the audience saying, "Oh, hey, you should try jumping down off that ledge. Maybe there's something cool down there," you know? So,
like hypothetically, or were they just goading you on?
I don't think they ever straight up trolled me.
Okay.
It was always just like really obscure. Like I wouldn't have, I mean, I don't think you guys have covered this yet, but there's the whole, there's the part in Bloodborne where you can get like the doll's outfit, you know, where you go into the doll's world or whatever, that you have to jump down a bunch of really obscure tiny platforms to find the entrance to, and stuff like that, where I'm like, oh wow, I never would have known that was there if there weren't people that had like read the strategy guide or whatever saying, hey, you should try to go to this weird area that you wouldn't have known about otherwise.
Yeah, the thing about these games is that they have that built-in kind of collaborative aspect to them. And that's always been a thing. Like I think it was either Dark Souls or Demon's Souls where the wiki was hosted by the people who made the game. Like they wanted people to share that information and recreate that kind of sense. And that's really inherent, and it's part of what we try to do. Yeah. And then also just kind of being involved in the community is that collaborative effort, and that's something that we're really into.
Well, you know, I'm sure it's not anything that's news to you guys, but that's part of what really makes the Souls games feel like a legitimate successor to like the original ethos of the Zelda games, was that Miyamoto, you know, put in secrets in the game with no pointers to them because he was like, I want kids on the schoolyard to have to like collaborate and tell each other about how to find the dungeons and stuff like that. And Dark Souls seems very much, I mean, especially with the messages you can leave, you know, cryptic messages you can leave for each other to point out, you know, hidden walls and stuff like that, is very much in that spirit, which is really cool.
Yeah, super, super, super rad. I think that your story echoes like a lot of people. Like we either talk to people who haven't played Bloodborne because they don't have a PS4, or I also talk to people who have only played Bloodborne.
Yeah,
right. And you're not, you know, exactly in that situation, but people who have had the most rich or the most complete experience with Bloodborne, just because it was a system seller and it was kind of the new hotness. I find it harder than the previous games in the series, but I don't know if that's just because I'm used to the older games.
have to learn that stuff.
Yeah, and I'm not sure because I feel like it can both be more difficult, like in a single combat encounter, but also have fewer points in the progression of like the campaign that just make you want to give up. You know what I mean? Like there are definitely some sections in Bloodborne where like you're constantly taking like sanity damage or whatever, but nothing on the scale of Blighttown or whatever, where it's just like stand in poison for hours. So I feel like they kind of step back from some of the really abusive higher level things just in like their level design and quest design, kind of I think to make room for having the combat be more of a challenge unto itself. Like it feels like it has more of a focus on almost like Ninja Gaiden combat in a way that the prior games didn't, which is cool to see. So
yeah, the comparison we made was like a Platinum game or like a like a God Hand or Bayonetta or something like that.
Yep.
It's kind of take some cues from that.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah. Cool. What did we do last time?
Well, last time we took a side trip into a land of nightmares and we fought this gigantic spider thing, actually a great one called Amygdala. Sick pronunciation there. And after slaying her, we were sure to be done with her and her kind rather, forever and ever.
No, we'll never see those again.
Nope.
And we never saw them before. And so heading into the village, we got a couple of things some cleanup we're gonna do before then. But just as far as what this place actually is, and it should be noted, like we dipped in here before when we went to the jail.
Yeah.
Which you can get there kind of being through the lanky bagmen who can kidnap you. But this is the village proper, and this is kind of a sealed off portion of Yharnam that was founded by the School of Mensis, which, as we mentioned before, is not necessarily a literal institution of learning. It's kind of a way of thought or like a philosopher's club or something like that.
You can't get a full ride.
Yeah, exactly. Well, if your roommate in the School of Mensis dies, you get a full ride.
You get a sack full of eyeballs.
Yeah, you get a full ride of eyeballs.
Yep.
Yeah,
a full ride to the eyeball store.
You get a lifetime supply, i.e., 2. So this is part of the upper echelon of the church, and the other one being the choir. We're going to deal with them fairly soon. And the choir is dedicated to communing with these great ones through blood ministration. Mensis turned this entire ward of the city into this carnal house for essentially doing this Mensis ritual that we see referenced. And either kind of creating their own great ones, which we see in the kind of boss of this area, what I kind of view to be an attempt at that, and then also just manipulating the nightmare itself. And that leads into the really the end game, where we end up in the end game.
Yeah.
With Mikolash, the leader of this, we don't meet here, but we will run into later.
Yeah, we kind of meet him here.
Yeah, we meet him as a sense.
Yeah, we meet him in Meat Space. So if there's a thesis for this section, specifically coming hot off the heels of, slaying Rom back there in Bergenworth, it's that all bets are off, kind of. Like, this is a little bit where things start going off the rails, both narratively, the veil is dropped, and also kind of like from a gameplay point of view. If you recall back to like the very beginning of the game, when you were, kind of dying by that crucifixion fire in Central Yharnam over and over again, this really feels like them trying to match that again, because Yharnam is, everybody's in full-on frenzy, and they're throwing everything they have at you and turning this place into a war zone.
Yeah, it's so dense, like with enemies and hazards.
Yeah. There's a section of it. Not to jump too far ahead, but the section of the level between where you come back out of like the kind of church cathedral area, and then there's just this gauntlet between that point and where you get to the one reborn, where I don't think that I ever passed through that section without just sprinting through it. It's like, because I'm just like, there's no way I'm surviving this if I try to fight, but I can dodge past these freaks just to try to take another shot at the boss. But yeah, it just feels overwhelming in a way that I think is very unique to this section of the game.
And that's a theme actually in a lot of the responses that we get from listeners on this episode and on this area, is that even if they are the most disciplined Souls players who kind of take things things slow and soak in the details. They ended up running here. Right. And that kind of plays into a little bit of the horror because this is such a striking area visually.
Yeah.
And if you are kind of getting most of it in blurs and flashes during a sprint, then that, you never get a straight look at it.
Yeah. In the progression that you guys are following here, you did visit this area earlier when you got kidnapped by the bagman.
Yeah.
Because that was the point in the game where, I was kind of amazed by that because I didn't really feel like they just sort of started pointing at the kind of Cthulhu mythos, Lovecraftian stuff in like very, very, very indirect ways, but it really felt mostly like werewolves and vampire hunters and like Victorian Gothic classic kind of stuff. And then I wake up in this jail and come out into the unseen village, and the like title, text title pops up on screen that says the unseen village, and I'm like, okay, is this already sounding like it's a weird hallucination or a different dimension or something? And then all of the statues have the classic like Cthulhu tentacle faces on them and everything. I'm just like, what? Like, it really is a turn where they're just like, oh, like I remember thinking how powerful that was because it was almost entirely unspoken environmental storytelling, just of sort of like, oh, so this is what's going on in this game. And now when you return to it and you're playing through kind of like the meat of the gameplay part that you guys are talking about now, you really are just sort of like, all right, so now I'm not just trying to escape from this weird world. I have to figure out how to navigate it. Yeah.
I mean, back in the Bergenworth episode when we covered the jail with Danielle, what happened was, I kind of alluded to when you're kidnapped, you're not sure how far away you were taken, right? Like here is this weird place that feels a little bit like Yharnam, but it's so different. And then when you kill Dark Beast Parl, I almost said Carl.
Dark Beast Carl is a different Dark Beast entirely.
Yes, and go through and see that is adjacent to Old Yharnam. That it places it right there. And if you didn't do that before walking through into this and seeing that, yes, this is literally just a neighborhood. That is so different aesthetically. It really does.
That extended for me too, because when I played it, I was trying to beat Dark Beast Parl, and I was just getting completely owned. And then I think I realized that I could just port out back to one of the earlier save points. I think I just kind of bailed out of this part of the game entirely and went back and made progress elsewhere, and then connected back into it from the world map later. And so my first experience with the space was just like you were saying, I had no idea how it connected to the rest of the game. It felt like its own totally separate world, and it was amazing to see how it fed back into the spaces that I was more familiar with long after having first encountered it.
Well, it should, right? The idea of this place is not that it's we call it a neighborhood, but it's not a neighborhood that people in Yharnam were aware of. Right. It's this whole idea of this there's a part of the city we don't talk about and don't look at.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that it's close, actually makes it scarier.
Yep.
Right.
This is the human trafficking that happens in every major city. This is not the comparison in a video game to a real life tragedy, which I guess I just did and feel bad about. But it is. I mean, it is the dirty underside of a city that is actually hidden. Hidden is not just it's tucked away. It's also this has been going on for a long time. People in this area have been kidnapping people from Yharnam to use for this stuff for a long time, enough time to build a jail and build buildings and statues and, all of that stuff. So it is something that people have turned a blind eye to for a really long time, especially, given the ties to the church. The church has turned a blind eye to this. It has this whole idea of corruption in a structural sense, as opposed to just corruption as space fungus and
right.
Seeds crystals and stuff like that we've seen. This is we saw the government and the church burn down Old Yharnam. That sucks. Oh wait, they have been sanctioning a city that is this compound that functions to do violence on their citizenry.
Mm-hmm.
That just feels way grosser and more corrupt to me
Yeah.
than that did.
Yeah. If Yharnam was a suburb, Yahar'gul is like the movie that David Lynch would make about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Just imagine the beginning of Blue Velvet with an eye in the yard, then an ear, and that's it. Since we killed Ram, a lot of things are different. This ushers in the Blood Moon, which that's Ram was the bulwark that stopped us from being able to get there and kind of get to the nightmare we're ultimately going. But it also kind of changes these phases in the city. So there's some things that are a little bit different going on. Like right after we kill Ram, we wake up in that Forbidden Chapel, which is somewhere we could have been before. If we had that tonsil stone, we could have gone here, as we mentioned. But this we can actually just kind of run through if we want to. And as we mentioned before, if you have high enough insight, you see this. But if you're wandering around the cathedral ward, there are amygdalas everywhere.
Yep.
And that is so good. Like, they've always been there. We just didn't know enough to look for them, which is one of my favorite cosmic horror tropes of all time. Like, it is one of my favorite things. And that was a real shocker for me.
Yeah, I think it's a really cool implication of how they decided to define or translate, or wherever the terminology came from, but calling that resource insight, because in the Cthulhu kind of mythos idea, it has like a parallel to like the idea of sanity. In a lot of Cthulhu games, it's like, oh, your sanity points are depleting, so you're going to go insane. But the fact that they didn't call it sanity, it's not like you're seeing these things because you're losing your mind. You're gaining like more insight into how this world actually functions, and that's why you're seeing all this madness around you. I think is a really interesting way of framing that part of what I think this fiction is partially about.
I think it lands better than if it was just a sanity stat.
Right. Yeah.
It's borrowing it's two aspects of like the tabletop Call of Cthulhu game, where you have this is dorky. This is a real beat up Gary statement I'm going to make here in a moment. But you have because you have that sanity, which is just something that just goes down, and the way it works is the more it goes down, the faster it goes down in the tabletop game. But then you also have a mythos score, and that's what this is, which is that when you see crazy shit, your mythos score goes up, and that allows you to kind of gain this knowledge, but it makes you're more likely to see these things for what they are, and more likely to take sanity hits, which also happens in this game. The way they reflect it is your frenzy resistance goes down as your insight goes up.
Oh, so right. I didn't even know that. That must have been why the Nightmare Frontier gave me so much trouble.
That wasn't why. That was probably one reason why.
That's one reason. But yeah, I didn't. I had been for a lot of my playthrough, I was just letting insight build up basically to see what happens. But I did not realize that made frenzy hit you harder, because I definitely encountered some frenzy enemies that it was just like half a second and I was owned.
Yep. The amazing thing about insight, and we talked about this last time, but just it bears repeating, is that like there's no benefit to insight. Like we're trained to think of it as the corollary in other Souls games would be humanity, which is a huge benefit to carrying around a lot of humanity on you, at least in Dark Souls 1. But there's no benefit to insight, and that just ties in really well thematically. Like, that's not going to make you safer no matter what. You might know the truth, but it's not going to help you. Yeah. And that's, Lovecraft in a nutshell, really. And this kind of this brand new revelation that's hit the world is affecting everybody. It's not just us.
Yeah.
Like this is the natural result of like the nightmare progressing and of this ritual. By bringing down this blood moon, this is hastening the transformation of anybody who has kind of communed with the old ones in this way. And so as we go around, we can see how this has affected like a bunch of our old friends and even people who we've never seen. Like when you walk up to doors and knock on them, instead of hearing somebody saying, "Go away, Outlander," or whatever, there's going to be yelling and screaming and just people losing their minds.
Yeah. Everybody's going insane at this point. Gilbert, I don't know if this is the only trigger for it. I feel like it might happen earlier than this, that Gilbert turns into a beast. But Gilbert will break out. I see, just for the notes, I'm not sure if you did you fight him, Kole?
No.
Okay, you can. You can show up when he's there. And actually fight him as a beast. Like, he turns into a beast that's there.
Where is that? Is that in Yarnum, like near the beginning of the game?
Yeah. He's the
Okay,
first NPC you can run into, actually.
That's what I thought. Okay, because I only fought one human that turned into a beast, but he was on a rooftop near the like Forbidden Woods.
Yep. The beggar.
Yeah, so that's a different guy. Anyway.
This also causes, this doesn't have anything to really do with the Blood Moon, but it also is the trigger for Eileen's storyline wrapping up. So we should probably talk about her just a little bit.
So you find her kind of in a heap outside of the Grand Cathedral, which is, convenient because you're right here anyway, right?
Yeah.
And she has continued hunting hunters as she does, and she mentions that she probably bit off more than she could chew with this Mark who is inside the Grand Cathedral, this bloody crow of Canehurst.
Yeah, and this is one of the toughest hunter fights in the game. I didn't beat it until my most recent playthrough, and it was really tricky. I think this fight is really, really tough. He uses the Chikage, which means that if he transforms it and uses it, it will drain his HP. Mm-hmm. And only by just dodging around a lot and letting him do a lot of damage to himself did I manage to beat this fight. Very, very hard, though. He does so much damage. Even just like a pistol shot from across the room does, 40% of my health.
Wow.
I think that NPCs and enemies in general have their thumbs on the scale when it comes to firearms damage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I kind of both had bad and good luck with Eileen in my playthrough because I didn't trigger her properly. I missed some opportunity to start her quest line, and so if you do that, then later on in the game you just have to fight her directly. And so I was like, oh shit, all right, well, I do want her cool gear. But she was like kicking my ass when I first encountered her, so I ran off and then came back. And this was like not long after the game had been released, and I discovered afterwards that I'm pretty sure I beat her by that bug where if you left the game in idle mode for long enough, bosses would just like stop doing attacks basically. But it was the first time I encountered it, so I was just like, oh man, I'm doing really good in this fight. So I basically I think I wouldn't have exploited that bug if I knew it was happening, but I also don't know if I ever would have beaten Eileen directly if not for it. So I accept the offering from the Bloodborne gods on that
one. from Ram the vacuous chip. Yeah.
It is. I never had it with this character. I only had it with a couple bosses, one of which we're coming up on soon, which is very tough without that glitch, I think. If you beat this bloody crow of Canehurst, she will pass on and you can become the hunter of hunters. Which is kind of like a covenant, but really I think in the fiction there's just supposed to be one at a given time. And she gives you the Hunter of Hunters badge, which is really good. That increases your stamina regen. Makes that faster, which is great. And it's kind of a sad story. Like she makes it, she decides to retire. It didn't have the impact on me that the Alfred and Annalise story did that we talked about. And I didn't have as much impact as any of the Dark Souls 1 NPCs did for me. Like, I was like, okay, like she's kind of old. I get it. But I wasn't that impressed with it. Like, I like her design and I like her voice actress, but I wasn't that into her actual arc. It's just personally. All of the ladies who we run into are definitely having problems as well. Ariana is doubled over in pain and just kind of moans and will no longer give you blood. There's a climax to this storyline, which is really, really, just really, really absurd, and surprising, which we'll talk about next episode.
Yeah. And then the flip side, Ariana's coin, Adela, since she is really associated with the church, she just goes out of her mind. You find her outside of the chapel, and she knows that even though your blood is tainted, she can't help herself, and she just straight up attacks you.
Yep. If you go back to the Hunter's Dream, it's a little bit darker now. The clouds
love this skybox.
Yeah, it looks really good. And I think this little bit you have again in the notes, and I'm not trying to to Monday morning quarterback you on this, but I don't think this is triggered by this. I think this poem that she does can happen earlier.
Okay.
And it's somewhat random, but the doll reads a poem every once in a while. If you can find audio, you should cut it in because it's pretty neat.
O Flora of the moon, of the dream, O little ones, O fleeting will of the ancients, let the hunter be safe, let her find comfort, and let this dream, her captor, foretell a pleasant awakening, be one day a fond, distant memory.
I think the one thing that, so I noticed that this playthrough, so I threw it in there. But her dialogue, on most of the moon phases, she ends up changing them a lot of the time. And this time, she's really kind of fixating on your blood echoes. She says that the scent of them soothes her. Again, kind of playing into this minor theme of scent being important in this world.
Yeah. So let's hit up Yahar'gul. Do it.
Yeah. So when you are spawned back into this fountain in the hidden chapel, you see this doorway open up in front of you. When you walk through there, you see what, aside from a couple of other skyboxes, must be one of the most metal looking sights that you see in the game outside of the nightmare.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of heavy metal album cover in this game, so that's saying something.
Yeah, it is definitely. This is a good one though too.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the weirdest sentences you've ever written, Cole. The light has a red hue, and there's a gigantic amygdalas clinging to the side of every building, taller than a Pizza Hut.
Yeah,
which I didn't realize was like a unit of measurement or like expression.
It's a pretty standard architectural term. I'm sure.
No,
how tall is it? Like 6 Pizza Huts?
Yeah, like how many pHs is it? Gary, it was like 1 o'clock last night when I was writing this.
Yeah,
I like to have fun, you know that.
Yeah, I know. It's very funny.
But it's super creepy to have them just passively clinging to the side. You see them in the cathedral ward, but you're kind of like down in the buildings. You never have a good vantage point. But when you step out on these plazas, you're actually seeing, these Yahar'gul buildings that just have them sticking onto the side, and you're never sure if they're just going to like pop off like locusts and come at you. They're just menacing you and breathing ever so slightly.
I know at some point I tried to, to bother them, tried to like aim a ranged weapon at them or something. And I think that because I was thinking there's the one early on that at first when you encounter it, it's invisible and it just picks you up and then slams you to the ground and you don't know what happened. And then when you come back, you can see it. And so I was like, can I provoke these things somehow? Mm-hmm. But they, as far as I could tell, they're just totally passive and shrug you off and pretend like you're not even there.
I think that there are only two who can like directly interact with you here, and we'll talk about them when we get there. But it's just the implication, right?
Yeah. Well, it's unsettling. It's like these giant predators sitting there, just sort of like not knowing whether they're going to do anything is the most effective thing about them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like every time you walk by them, it's terrifying. And like what it reminded me of is in the basement of Latria in Demon Souls in 3-2 when you're down on the swamp and you had to walk over those tentacles. And it's like, oh, these things are going to hit me, right? Like that's what's going to happen. These things are going to attack me, and they never do. So like every time you walk under one of these, I'm just like, oh shit, like it's going to grab me or it's going to do some kind of new attack. Like I'm already being overwhelmed by these like blood phantoms, and I'm fighting this thing. Great, fuck me. But then it just never happens. So it just has that anticipation, which I really, really love.
Yeah. So you're walking down into this and you're getting a little bit more detail, whereas a lot of the statues we've seen so far have been people with kind of obscured eyes. Now we are seeing these amygdala statues out in the open, whereas before they were just inside the Grand Cathedral, kind of along with some of these just ghastly statues of what we're going to find out later are the cramped coffins, but just kind of these amalgamations of corpses like reaching out of the ground like fingers.
Yeah, it gets very, very horror in this part, just sort of like unsettling imagery, which is an interesting progression, how much they do with the statuary specifically and how much they say with these carvings and sculptures.
Yeah.
And it's not even, and when you start running into the people as well, that's a really striking image.
Yeah.
You run into this mummified body in the middle of this plaza who has this cage over his head. And these Mensis cages, which we'll learn about later when we eventually get one of our own, remind me of like turn of the century fringe science. Like they do something from like Road to Wellville.
Yeah.
Like do your laughing exercises on one of those belts that just jiggles you while wearing a cage.
If you watch Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula, when they're in the asylum, there are people who specifically have these kinds of cages over their head because it was a turn of the century like way to deal with a crazy person. It's just put this cage over their head so they can't bite anyone.
Yeah, like Hannibal Lecter.
Yep.
Yeah, or like what it looks like to me is back in the era of black and white film when all makeup was done in like garish clown kind of stuff. What they were trying to do is use that to make certain features stand out on film when it was shot. But in order to make symmetrical features, the key guy behind all that kind of like pancake makeup developed something that looked a lot like this. That was just this massive cage that's stuck over an actress's head that lets you set the dials and the flanges to where you could apply and create this illusion of perfect symmetry. It looks absolutely horrible.
Wow.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that, but that sounds fascinating.
Yeah.
It's really striking though. And then they do that thing where you see one of them and you think that it might be significant. And then you see a couple more and like, oh, this isn't significant. And then you see so many that it becomes significant again.
Right.
Like, oh, everybody has one of these. It's not like, it's not haphazard. Like it is, you're trying to tell us something about the citizenry here.
Yeah. Well, and you guys, you talked about the Cainhurst Castle already, right?
Yeah.
Because something that, I mean, whatever, I got my minor in art history at Portland State. And what was really striking to me about Cainhurst was there's statuary all over the game, earlier in Yarnum and everything. And like you were saying, it's these figures that have like veils over their faces and other sort of affectations like that. But when you're in Cainhurst, a lot of the statuary is just straight up like classic, like Catholic imagery with no alteration whatsoever. And just being able to say like, this place has a very different like set of values and kind of background than the other places you've been just through what the iconography that they keep around them is. So like I was surprised by that particular detail because it felt so one-to-one with our own like real world that it kind of made a connection to the reality we live in a way that doesn't really exist anywhere else in the game. And I feel like that spectrum of like, oh, what the game is saying is that all of this stuff in the fiction kind of exists along with our real world experience, and like some reality, is shared with this Bloodborne mythos is really, really fascinating to me.
Kind of a growing thesis across the show here is as we go to these different areas, as we've been to Cainhurst and as we've been to Old Yarnum and whatnot, is that we're looking at the ways that these different civilizations all responded to the same phenomenon.
Right.
And even down into the different ways that that this church, the different sects have kind of brought it together. And I think that is supported in the text, that like we're supposed to be noticing these differences.
Yeah,
for sure. So as you continue, they start kind of trickling in these, just regular Yarnamites that we fight, but some of them are also these kind of blood phantoms here, where they will respawn continuously, and they introduce the respawning enemies way before they actually introduce the bell ringing.
Right.
And they respawn in a way that's really unsettling and makes you just think that this is how life will be now. There's a swirling portal out of the ground like the mad ones from Hemwick, and then just here comes an enemy.
Yep. So we're up to the set of stairs here, the stairs of the false gods. Or we can go to the Widow's Requiem.
Well, the Widow's Requiem is after the Stairs of the False Gods. Okay. I have no idea if the people who made the guide were just making stuff up.
I hope so.
Yeah, me too.
Like just EMB just saying down like just what sounds cool.
Yeah.
Because that definitely sounds cool. But you head onto these Stairs of the False Gods, and it's this really harrowing gauntlet of a mix of real enemies and phantom enemies. Ranged and close attackers, down into this little darkened room where there are more enemies to ambush you when you get in there. It's really tricky.
Yeah.
Getting down here.
And they're actively encouraging you not to dally on this. Like, I can't imagine like luring them out one by one, again, because of the respawning enemies. But if you stop anywhere along this, one of the amygdalas perched along the side of this Widow's Requiem, this jail building, will reach down and frenzy you, like pick you up and warp you back up to the plaza.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're not supposed to. Everyone ran through this, and the fact that they have the respawning enemies makes me think that that's the intention, at least, for until you can kind of get a toehold and get some of these bell ringing women. Nope. But initially, I think that you're just supposed to just run, and like that kind of plays into when we're talking about the statuary and how metal and unsettling the atmosphere is. If you're just supposed to run through this and not stop and take a look at it, like just imagine how much creepier it is if you're never getting a good glimpse of it.
Yep.
Like you run past the statue, you don't actually stop and look at it. Like I stopped and looked at it because I do this show. And, but if not, like I'm just like, oh, I saw that statue out of the corner of my eye. That's way scarier.
Yeah.
And they're trying to, I think, encourage you just to sprint through.
Yeah. I mean, the way that they communicate that kind of stuff purely mechanically by just saying like, yeah, if you try to hang around here, these enemies are just going to keep coming. You just need to get out of here. But in such a, I don't know, just an intuitive way, like the game, what's happening is speaking to you and kind of reinforcing the experience they want you to have is really, really impressive.
Yeah. And contrast that with the fact that this is one of the more kind of brightly lit areas of the game.
Yeah.
If this was dark, you would have missed it, but they have it right there so that, even if you're running past it, you're going to catch it in your periphery, in the dark, blurry side of your, corner of your eye. And it's going to leave that impression. Doesn't matter if it's, subliminal or, what.
Right. Yeah.
It deals with light and darkness, like both, because you go, there's no electricity. So you're going into interior and exterior locations. And whenever you're outside, it's bright and you have to sprint. And whenever you're inside, it's pitch dark and you're kind of punished for sprinting because that's where they set up the ambushes and that's where they set up, the honeypot, kind of there's an item, but there's a guy behind you up on the ledge. So it's just really interesting the way they play with those two things. Whereas like if you're in the dark, you really need to like take your time here. Like at the bottom of these stairs, if you just run in, you're going to get shot by the guy who's right on the corner there. And then there's another guy around the corner with a pitchfork. And it's very easy. Like everything from this point in the game hits really, really hard, which is something I don't like about Bloodborne, where like at a certain point, everything like 40% is the minimum amount of damage that something can do. And it's really easy to get comboed to death in any area any part of this area.
Yeah. I remember I just got trashed on a lot in this part of the game, especially by, just like, I mean, it's the classic Souls thing of like, I would die and then just want to kind of like get past the horde of scrubs at the beginning so they could get further into the part, and then they gang up on you and the game's like, no, you need to actually slow down. But like, because they can just basically stun lock you into being dead in seconds if you just let one of them catch you, it is really unforgiving for sure.
Down in this little room, we run into the first kind of bell ringing woman, and not the sinister woman who rings a sinister bell. This is a different sinister woman who rings a different sinister bell.
Similarly sinister. Yeah.
And this obviously recalls again Demon Souls with the Shrine of Storms, with those characters, those reapers that spawned ghosts. Yeah,
it's not as kind as the whatchamahoos at the catacombs, because those necromancers at least have the courtesy to stay dead.
Yeah, and you could ameliorate it with the divine weapons, and here there's no such way to do it. Yeah. You're in these interior areas which are really dark and have cages instead of walls sometimes, which are really interesting. Again, in a way that kind of recalls like old sanitarium, kind of setting, which I think is super neat. Down this is the Widow's Requiem, which you head on over to the cheerily named Sacrifice Square.
Yep. After getting past,
there's fans of the PC game of the same name. There's nothing untoward about it. They just love third-person RTSs.
This is our ball. Oh wait, no, I'm thinking of Sanitarium because you said Sanitarium earlier.
Yeah.
But Did you guys have trouble with these upgraded brick brutes or minions or whatever they are? The red ones?
I don't remember those guys being my biggest problem, just because they still have a pretty I felt like a pretty like readable pattern, you know. But I mean, everything in this area killed me at some point. So
yeah, it might just be because you're fighting in more cramped quarters.
Yeah,
but yeah, they definitely gave me some fits, especially when they're mixed in with other enemies. But this sacrifice square is a really striking set piece because there's a treasure room over here, but we'll get there in a different, cooler way later. The main fixture of this is this kind of place where a couple of grave women are dancing in a circle with an amygdala perched over top of this long stairway, shooting exploding lasers up it.
Yeah. That part got me. And that was one of those parts where I was really grateful that I was streaming and that there were people with more knowledge than I was in the chat, because I came into this area and yeah, they really pile it on because there's this exploding laser pattern going up a flight of stairs that you can't see down until you're on the stairs, and there's respawning enemies surrounding you as you approach, and it's just so extreme, and I died a bunch of times, and the people in chat while I was streaming just started putting in chat just like left, stay left on the stairs, and I was like, all right, and so I just like sprinted down the stairs hugging the left side, and like the laser just kind of like just goes right around you if you do that, and I survived and like dove past it at the end, but I don't know how long that would have taken me if I just had to try to like read the laser pattern while there's respawning enemies punching you in the back. Like, it's insane.
Yeah, but the one thing is I like that you could have fought the capital A amygdala before this and knew how the laser worked.
Yeah,
you know, because it's a really, you know, it's the same attack. But if not, you know, either way, one encounter can kind of prepare you for the other, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
You know, but it's just such a hard set piece, and it's because of that, those respawning enemies. Like, you can't take your time at any point in this section of the game, unless you just dutifully like clear everything, which I did because I wanted to fully explore it, and it was just so hard and you know, tedious to just clear everything and then come back. And you can never clear the amygdala. You know, the stairway will never be safe.
And if you know where the bell ringer is in that part, then you can get to them and take them out, and then the respawning guys are gone. But even in this case, as I remember, you have to like jump down off of the side of the stage onto a balcony and like go underneath this area to get to the bell ringer. So they like even hid the bell ringer super hard, basically just to like encourage you just to try and get the fuck through this area without dying. It felt like
really devious.
So I'll put this question to you guys. Is this an intentional kind of like echoing or repetition of like the Hellkite Bridge in Dark Souls, or even like 1, 2 in Demon Souls, from's tradition of just putting seemingly impassable stuff on bridges with these ambushes?
Now that you mention it, it does seem like a theme that they like upholding.
Yeah, I mean, they always want to put some kind of choke point, you know, that is like, it's also kind of recalls the archers, going back to what Steve was talking about, where like it is just a really, really intimidating, you know, one, you know, choke point in a level. Like they like to do that at about this point in the game. The weird thing about, I guess 1, 2 is the exception there in Demon Souls, but like it does feel like that Hellkite Bridge. It does feel like the archers, like a little bit. You should need to explain. And that, man, I'm talking about it. It's going to sound like I don't like the area, which I do, but I'm frustrated by the fact that like you can't take your time here, but if you do, you're really rewarded. Because this little broken railing to the right is really important. You know, if you can head down there, because it unlocks one of my favorite optional areas in the game. You know, you head off this little broken railing and you can get this key to the Upper Cathedral ward, which is super cool. Like, I love the Upper Cathedral ward. And you can also get, if you're playing a sorcerer in this an arcane build, you get the tiny Tonitrus, which one is cute, two is a really good spell. So it is, but I missed it a lot. Because I was too, you know, terrified and too much in a hurry here.
It's a little bit out of the frying pan and into the fire too, because even if you run past this, you're going to get into the chapel proper, and usually familiarity is a good thing, right? Like it's a little bit the eco effect. No matter how far afield I go, if I see something I can ground myself to, awesome, great. Like here it is. But everything here has changed as well, including, the part of this that you can even get into.
Yeah. So this is where we could have teleported out if we first got bag napped.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Here. Somebody has broken this lantern, which one, they can do that. Like that's no, I don't care for that. But two, this is another one of these just like, if you go down these chapel stairs, one of these like legendary encounters in this section of the game where you fight 3 hunters at once.
Which is some bullshit.
Man, is this hard? And like it's hard to the point where
I think I only ever ended up killing 2 of them. I think the third one I just like left him there because he was too much of an asshole.
they stay dead, which is great. But like I can't play this part the way that I think Bloodborne wants me to play Bloodborne, where like it's fast and I'm really in there, because you can't like get up in the action here. Mm-hmm. If you're fighting one guy at all, like the other ones are hitting you, and the consequences are so high. Like everybody does so much damage. To like the only way I fought these guys is just kiting them around the stairs forever.
Exactly. Yeah, I pulled one of them each time and just like took him out on his own, and then the third guy, even one-on-one, he was just too much of a pain in the ass. I just forgot about it. But
it's kind of bullshit. Like I kind of think it's really really shitty to like. But because the hunter fights are really fun when they're one-on-one. Mm-hmm. Like it's like I'm fighting an equal. They have the same moveset that I do. I can stagger them and stuff like that. But 3-on-1, and they do the one, if you're coming from here, they do chain pull. If you pull one of them, usually somebody else will notice. Yeah. You can come in through the back and get a backstab on one and fight them 1 at a time or 2 at a time rather than 3. But like, I hate this fight. Like I beat it. Like it's not like I can't do it. It forces me to play in a really unfun way to get through it. And I would love to hear somebody, if anybody's listening, write in and like defend this and say like, no, I thought it was really fun, because I don't think it's fun. Like I think this is a really shitty encounter. I don't know if you guys feel strongly about it, but this made me really mad. While simultaneously, like it's like I got through it. I just got through it in a way that forced me to do it in a not very fun way.
Yeah, I think it might have been the cannon and rifle spear guy that I never took out, because he just one-shotted the shit out of me all the time. Where I was just like, all right, fine. Yeah. If you want to give this guy a weapon that he can just one-shot me over and over, again, it's sort of like, congratulations, game. You figured out.
Yeah.
Oh, it's all numbers. Okay. Yeah, the Beast Claw guy gave me fits too, because he's so aggressive and so just up on top of you that you want to take out the cannon guy, but this guy's always going to be on on your periphery getting shots in until you're down.
Yeah. In the lore, one of these guys is wearing the Yahar'gul set, which is the hunter. They call it a hunter, but they're really kidnappers. Yeah. So these are just more kidnappers, but they're different from the lanky bagmen we've seen before.
I see.
And also different than the executioners.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is, this could be it's a boss encounter. Like if you came here before, you have the ability to unlock the other, the door that's on the other side of this broken lamp, and you can bypass this, which is a very good reason to come here earlier. But this is I haven't heard anybody defend this really.
Yeah. I'm just it just doesn't seem like, again, it just that. As much as I really love this game, like there are these points where like it wants me to play a certain way out of one hand, and then the other hand it doesn't.
Yeah,
that just really
it feels like they wanted this to feel like kind of a return to. Sorry, my terminology isn't going to be great, but there's the boss at the end of the forest. That's the 3 hunters with different weapons that you have to fight all at the same time. And I had a great time with that boss fight, and I was actually really lucky, and I cleared it my first try, but it was like just by the skin of my teeth. Like it was so close, but I made it. It's one of those amazing kind of like Souls game experiences of you just making it through. And it felt like this was sort of supposed to be like the next step up from that, but they just made them kick your ass too hard, and it wasn't fun anymore. I felt
it's just a numbers thing. Like the Shadows of Yharnam don't one-shot you. You know,
until their last third.
until their last third. But usually by then, you know, that's part of the gimmick of the boss fight is learning to focus fire. And because if the last third, if there's one guy left, you're okay.
Yeah,
like you can dodge one guy who can one shot me is not a problem. You know, like I'm used to that. So like Shadows of Yarn, it's just a numbers thing. Like and it also just subverts the fact that, you know, a lot of my favorite fights up until this point have been hunter on hunter fights, like Father Gascoigne and the different hunters. And this is just not that.
Yeah.
You know, it's like taking something that I thought worked really well and then just not doing it, like choosing to do something different.
Yeah.
It's numbers, but it's also like the attacks that they chose to give them, I feel like, you know, because like the cannon, for instance, is a fast projectile with a really big splash damage, and it's like piling that on top of everything else. It's just like, I guess what I would say is it kind of shows how much just like even small decisions about like what kind of weapon the enemy should have or what kind of movement pattern they should have or whatever can kind of filter out to changing the entire kind of feel of the fight, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that flame sprayer got me a lot too. Like if I was fighting one, I just get caught in the fire, and it's like, well, fuck me, I'm staggered, and the other guy killed me.
There's another detail here that starts showing up right around here, especially if you go down to the jail cells and where you found like Adela. You start seeing these corpses of the snatchers, of the kidnappers, the bagmen, or whatever you want to call them. This is kind of the flip side of a coin that I really love. You know, when you have the boss that turns into a regular enemy and it feels super empowering. You know, like later on in the game, like, yes, this used to be a huge, you know, they used to cause a lot of trouble for me, but now, you know, here they are just rank and file, and this shows how I've grown. This is a little bit the other way. Like, these guys gave me fits early on, like they're a major threat for the first good chunk of the game, but now something is here, and they're telegraphing that things are so dangerous that even these previously really tough things are just kind of like tossed like rags to the corners of these rooms.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know. I'll ask you guys this. Is this a change in management? Because like I don't think so. Like, as far as I can tell, like this is still, you know, under the control of the School of Mensis. Like, I mean, I guess like some of the Mensis people, you know, we know that Mikolash fled, and that could have been what happened. So maybe he was holding something in check that was managing these guys. But I never really knew why these guys were dead. I liked the effect that Cole's talking about, but I couldn't tell narratively like what killed them and why.
Well, am I right that when you come back through this area at this point, a bunch of the enemies along the crit path have changed? Like that there are some that like used to be pigs and now they're like way freakier monsters and stuff like that. So I felt like it was that like a stage of the nightmare had progressed and a bunch of stuff effectively like mutated and went wild and feral and started killing some of the things that had held power before because they had basically gotten out of control based on the progression of what's going on throughout the world.
Moon,
yeah, that's my read too, because those bagmen are already they look kind of like kin a little bit. You know, they got the tentacles and stuff like that, so I could see them not being as susceptible to the to the whims of the moon and having all this other stuff just kind of like, Mensis is still kind of in control, but it feels a little bit like the reactor's going critical mass and nobody knows how to stop it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and I guess I kind of answered my own question too in asking, like, maybe it just Mikolash had these things under some kind of thrall, and then just he decided to split. I don't know the timeline for that exactly, but I guess it doesn't really matter.
Well, maybe when the moon started having more sway, he was unable to keep them under control, and that was like why he fled. And this is the result of it kind of breaking free of its bonds, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
So we've been able to get to Main Street of Yahar'gul before, but more of it is open to us now. As Steve kind of alluded, the gigantic pigs are gone, and in their place we have these cramped casket enemies, which are these horrible granfaloons just kind of carting themselves along in these pine crates as they catch fire in this yellow liquid if you can lure them into it. And they are very quick, and they will very much kind of overwhelm you.
Did you know that they shot all the scenes on this main street on the Paramount backlot?
Wow.
Well, no, if you go up and look, it's just one texture. It's forced perspective. It's like the
Main
Hobbit.
Street USA.
Yeah. That's not Paramount. That's Disney.
Oh yeah. When you lure them into that liquid, which I found out on a more recent playthrough, it'll actually it'll use up the liquid, which is interesting. I don't know what that stuff is, but there's just like there's a corpse burning in the middle of this like candle.
Yeah.
And then if you put one of these things in it, it will kill it and use up all the liquid.
Weird.
Just a real weird little detail.
And does liquid come back if you respawn, or is it just gone forever?
I think it comes back.
Oh, okay. Huh. How strange. Do you also take damage if you go into it? I forget.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Too.
So again, this feels a little bit like football, kind of like the ROM fight where you are, if you're sprinting, like the game is encouraging you to do, you're having to pick your lines and dodge, juke one way from a cramped casket and zag another way to avoid this liquid. Fortunately, there's another way you can go.
Yeah. Down there.
Something I love, like right around by the entrance to Main Street proper, there's a lore note that says, "Behold, a pale blood sky." And if you remember all the way back to the beginning of the game, like you've been told to seek the pale blood. Well, this is it.
Yeah, this is what you wanted. Yeah. Happy? Yeah. That's what this is called. That's what this state of the world is. There's another one, and I don't see it in the notes, so I can't remember where it's at. There is a note somewhere in this area that says something like, "We must stop the Mensis ritual lest we all become beasts."
Yeah, that one, I think it's down in the chapel.
Yeah, it's like, so I was really curious about that one, what specifically the Mensis ritual was, as opposed to the other rituals in question, and stuff like that. Like I think that thought that was really compelling. Like the pale blood sky thing I liked a lot, but it was just like, oh, okay, this is that great. And when we're told, when we get to kind of the ending, and we start talking about our feelings on what our agency was here and what we were meant to do and things like that, that will all make sense. Like being told to seek the pale blood sky, this falls in line with that. That Mensis ritual, though, is really interesting to me, especially when you start thinking about like it being like maybe Mensis is not strictly in control here anymore.
Yeah. Right.
Weren't we told to seek the ritual baby or something like that?
The nightmare newborn.
Yeah,
but
it says like
nightmare newborn. It's such a good term. I love it.
Yeah, and Getty's nightmare newborns.
but didn't it also say like secret ritual broken? I always assumed that the ritual was the ritual and the Mensis ritual were one and the same, and it was trying to bring forward the moon through these sacrifices and stuff.
Yeah. It's just we can't stop it. It's telling us to stop, and it just happened. Like the people in Yharnam are turning into beast as we speak. Like they're moaning and freaking out and stuff like that. That's happening. It's made like chronology is weird.
Yeah.
I guess. So there's a high road and a low road. The high road is a little bit tougher, and there's a teleporting platform here, like that is never seen elsewhere in the game.
Yeah, that messes with my sense of space, actually, really bad.
Yeah, why is that there? Like, I don't understand that at all. And then there's an elevator you can find up there, which is useful if you don't clear out those 3 hunters. If you clear out those 3 hunters, it's quicker to run through that area, I think. If not, though, the elevator is pretty good.
Yeah.
So there's some weird little shortcuts way late in this level.
Yeah. So if you take the high road, you also get access to this kickin' rad tunnel that's lined with corpse statues.
The statues are begging at the wall.
Yeah.
Like I love those statues so much. They're like trying to climb out, like they got frozen, like the lava was rising or something like that. Like the water was rising. Like I love that image. I love the way those look. Yeah, but regardless, everything is kind of funneling you to this gigantic gate that looks like a fog wall, if you ever did see one. And this starts an amazing cutscene. Yeah, it's really, really good. And introduces the boss here.
And it also is sort of a preview of how the boss fight area works, right? Like it's both functional and striking aesthetically.
Yeah. And is a direct quote of another earlier arena, because I mean this is the end of 1-2 in Demon Souls. Like, this is the exact arena of the Tower Knight, more or less.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But you have these bell ringers. You know, they're wearing red this time. They have tentacle faces, unlike most of the other ones that we've seen. And they're ringing these bells, and the blood moon becomes completely clouded over, not eclipsed, but just occluded by this fog. You know, telling you that it's something a little bit closer. And then upside down, this big dripping corpse monster falls to the earth, and this is the one reborn.
And this is one of the most just like gross looking creatures, I think, certainly in all of Bloodborne, because it's one of the most just like macabre kind of straight up just like, oh, here's a bunch of like writhing bodies that are vomiting on you.
Yeah. This is the gaping rotten tower Nito.
It is in a long tradition of Souls just throw a bunch of corpses together. It is, and it is really gross, and it's also crude in a way that I think is meaningful. Like if the idea behind the One Reborn is that, like, so we know that they're luring people here. They've been kidnapping them for some purpose. We know that they've been experimenting with like jamming corpses together the entire time. Like if you like one of the inklings I have, and forgive me if I haven't had as much time this week to do the research I usually do, but is that like this is some kind of another version of like similar to Rom. Like this is another failed attempt at making a great old one. Yeah, like this is a bunch of people put together trying to make this thing, and when we made Rom, it ended up being this kind of idiot god. Is how I read that. Like this is a creature that has no intelligence. Like yes, it's a true great one, but it like is skittish and unintelligent. And this being, this is another attempt at that, and it's just this grotesque monstrosity.
It's a mockery.
Yeah. That's the word I'm looking for. It is a mockery, like a shambling semblance of like a great one. Yeah.
Well, what's funny, again, the way that different organizations cope with this idea or go after the same goal. Bergenworth had Rom. They ascended that way. She got her eyes, right? The Healing Church, or at least the choir, rather, they have their own. Like they got one of the original factory models. And this is the culmination of like Mensis's idea, and this tells you everything you need to know about Mikolash, and kind of like just where all these body parts you've been finding are coming from. Like everything here is just so macabre.
It feels it's very much almost like it seems like part of the backing of the fiction is like you were saying, seeing how these different groups with different outlooks approach this same sort of problem of like trying to achieve something like this. And this seems like the version of like this is what science hath wrought, right? It's like a Frankenstein's monster of a great one, but it's just an abomination in practice.
Science has gone too far.
Yes,
Steve Gaynor, Fulbright, quote unquote.
The School of Menses were too busy asking themselves if they could to ask themselves if they should.
Thank you.
It is like fight wise, it's like widely considered to be one of the easier boss fights in Bloodborne, like by people who I talk to and kind of scuttlebutt. Like if you know to go kill the maidens up top, which I knew because of Tower Knight. Really, so you run up to the side, you kill the maidens because they will buff the boss and shoot projectiles down at you. Actually, fighting the boss is not my favorite thing. Like I've never thought Souls do giant monsters that well.
That was my feeling about it too. Was that he's not super hard. He's just such a huge tile that is kind of hard to track.
can't read anything.
How you should navigate around it. Yeah.
Also, the camera is your worst enemy here. Like, even if you do take care of the Bell Maidens, trying you never can lock on to the part that you really want to lock onto.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they kind of make that a little bit worse by giving him that bullshit like corpse rain attack, where it just like pours corpses on you that do a lot of damage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's not, as far as I know, like unless you know that's coming and just know to start rolling in a direction.
Yeah.
There's not really a way to dodge that.
Well, it's a sound cue. Actually, if you look, there is a caster just kind of sticking out of the back of this thing like a reverse Quado, who starts casting that, and then that's what summons the corpse rain.
Yeah. So like it's fair enough to put a sound cue in there. Like I typically will listen to a podcast or something while I play through a Souls game. Not on my first time through, but on subsequent times. Especially once I start dying and getting frustrated. Like I need something to occupy my mind while I'm grinding down scrubs.
Yep.
On my way to collect my souls. You got
to listen to something so your mind doesn't devour itself. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I don't start contemplating my actual life on my way to end this video game one. So I got very frustrated by that corpse rain attack, but it's never been that hard. Like you just stick to his sides and hit him.
Yeah.
Yeah. It plays like the fact that he's not that hard makes us sense because he's a shitty version of the real thing. Whereas
he's supposed to be kind of pathetic in a way. He's disgusting and pathetic. I guess.
It made
so
Rom,
maybe you should feel bad.
So hard. I do feel bad for him. Like he's a sad pup. He's just a little baby. So.
Blue eyes.
Well, at first I thought, when I was playing this, he was supposed to be the quote-unquote nightmare newborn. Because it does really seem like he's a giant, gross baby.
But he's born, too. He, like, drips down from this aperture.
Yeah.
But you will discover that there is an even more nightmarish newborn past this guy. But.
Gary, I'm going to challenge you. Can you describe the miracle of birth any more like Ed Gein?
And drips down an aperture.
Yep.
When I said that, I was thinking about those MTV shows where it's like I didn't know I was pregnant. Where it's like people just walking around and then they just sit down one day and have a baby on accident, and it's just like whoops, like look what fell out of me, mom. That's what I was thinking about with the One Reborn.
Yeah. So yes. Also, the name is a little bit like misguided, right? Because the One, like, is this a true one? Well, no, obviously. How is it reborn? Then did it die? No,
well, it was the individual components probably died.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's being reborn 1,000 times.
Yeah. Each individual guy in there.
How'd all those guys get up in the moon? Come on.
Am I expected to believe in some kind of rocket ship?
If we can put a man on the moon, can we put a One Reborn on the moon? Yeah.
Can we put a lot of men on the moon all at once?
And sew them together?
Can we watch Jim Carrey and Courtney Love's The Man on the Moon?
Yeah. That sounds like a good time to me.
Yeah.
And The Great Beyond is the name of the REM song from that soundtrack, which plays into the theme. So looking for answers from The Great Beyond.
Yeah, we're pushing elephants up the stairs.
Yeah.
We are figuring out some deep... this is some deep lore that no one else has hit on yet. I am convinced of this.
Well,
cue the Teenage Dirtbags conspiracy theory music.
if you send me the stinger, I'll put it in.
Yeah, I will. I definitely will.
But I'm going to point out here something that I love about this. It's not falling from the moon. It's falling from a cloud that is closer to the Earth. Like it's a trick of perspective.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
At least that's the way that I read it. Like, we don't see it burn up on re-entry.
Bring him home. We want the One Reborn. I wonder how many tax dollars Yahar'gul has wasted bringing back the One Reborn through all his different movies. Playing in, so after you kill him, you just stick to his side and hit him. As we mentioned. Playing into just the pet peeve of mine with Bloodborne is that it doesn't do a good job rewarding the player item wise. You get you get yellow backbones from him, which is just a chalice dungeon item.
Yeah.
Like it's not even a chalice. Like this doesn't even open up a level. It just opens up a part of a level way later in the game.
Right.
Kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
for a boss fight. But the thing that happens after, I think, is really cool.
Yeah.
We get into this Advent Plaza here.
Up into this small room that is just lined with these cage bodies.
Yeah, I remember this area being so visually striking, and like you were saying, the item payoff for clearing this boss isn't great, but the kind of lore and this atmosphere of seeing what he was guarding, I think, is incredibly successful.
When you see the ones just out in the world, you think, okay, who did this to these guys? Right?
Yeah.
Like this, he was tied down. This was like a torture device. But you get into this room and they're all like sitting in an orderly fashion as though they were waiting to blast off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And like, oh, they're doing it to themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Pretty nuts.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty intense. And then you can inspect the one in the middle there, which will actually take us to the next area in the game. And presumably the one you're inspecting is Mikolash.
Yep.
Or his mortal remains, as it were. That has kind of become mummified. And we'll talk about Mikolash and the lore around that guy and stuff when we get there.
Yeah, but I thought this transition was amazing.
It's great.
Because, as I remember, it's basically this moment of you, as far as kind of the some of the concepts we were talking about earlier, of gaining this insight, and being transported in a way that I think is different than any way that you've kind of traversed this world up to this point.
Yeah. And it's, we've been sucked into the lecture building before, as a thing, which is all well and good. Like that's, that's cool. But a great one did that. This is just kind of through presumably the same method that Mikolash used. The same thing he's using this cage for, to kind of like concentrate his thoughts or what have you. Like you're doing that, which is, has implications and is neat. And
exactly.
Also so I really love that. And in the end, I really like this area, even though I do think parts of it are really frustrating.
Yeah.
But it's made up for like the next couple areas we're going to talk about in the game. I'm super into.
Yeah.
So like Bloodborne, if anything, like ends really strong, I think.
True that.
Yeah. So that about wraps it up. Do we have any wrap up, or do we have any wrap up thoughts for Yahar'gul, the Unseen City?
I agree that that some of this, there's definitely some stuff in this area that is a kick in the balls, I guess. But I really enjoyed what this section of the game said about the game world and your place in it, and how much it did play with expectations. Like you were saying, it did so much to either make you feel like harried and like you were overwhelmed and just had to escape through some of the enemy setups and stuff, but also, like you were saying, when it sort of removed other vestiges of safety that you felt like you had, like when you return to where there used to be a lantern and now it's destroyed, and you're just like, what isn't out of bounds, for this game to do. Like, I thought that at least I could rely on, and so making you feel like you really were in this strange, uncomfortable place at this point in the game's progression, I thought was really effective, and it made this part of the game very memorable.
I think, I agree with that. Like, I think that even in spite of the problems I had, like, I think that in the end, when I look back on Bloodborne after we've completed it and everything, and the DLC and stuff might change this, but one of the things I think Bloodborne does really well and continuously is drop the floor out from under you again and again.
Yeah.
Because we've talked about, like, it's comical. Like, somebody could compile a supercut of us saying, like, this is where shit gets real. Because we say it at the beginning of like 5 consecutive episodes. We're like, we thought it was about werewolves, but man, it's not. And we say that over and over, and it's not. Yes, it's us being idiots. Not you, Steve, me and Cole. But yes, it's us being idiots, but it's also the fact that the game just keeps doing that, like playing with that expectation and saying, like, no. Like, and it just underlines it so many times in a way that's really impressive. Like, It continuously surprises in the way it does that. And that is something that, like, I think, it does better than any game in the series. Like, that aspect is so impressive to me. And like, just that you will never know security. You know, like that, you will never get into a rhythm.
It's funny. We talked about Dark Souls 2, you know, in our text messages and even on the show, about how this is a game that just kind of keeps on giving. Like, it always felt like there was something new waiting in the wings. And this kind of does that thematically instead of with, you know, kind of like space.
With just areas. Yeah.
That was what I was going to say is, you know, that's what I really remember about my experience of Dark Souls was, you know, you're playing and you get to this new area and you're like, what the hell is this? And then you come around a corner and now you're in this crazy canyon with blue wyverns walking around everywhere. And you're just like, what the fuck is this? You know, and then you end up in Sen's fortress and there's all these swinging blades. And you're just like, Jesus Christ. And there just keeps being like, you know, you just keep unearthing layers and there's more and more insanity underneath it. And I do feel like what Bloodborne did was unify that feeling on, like you were saying, like a thematic and a unspoken narrative level, to make it face the player kind of, I think, in a way that kind of has more texture to it than just purely the surprise of a new crazy area, but it also is continuing adding on layers of kind of what it means to be in this world in a way that feels like it has more of a through line, I guess, than the other games in the series, as far as I perceive them.
Yeah,
it's like an emotional level, you know, which I just really, really impressive, and this definitely plays into that.
Yeah.
So again, just as we wrap up, Steve, thank you. Again.
Oh, absolutely. No, it was a ton of fun to get to talk about this stuff, and you guys are making me really want to do another playthrough of Bloodborne and another play. I occasionally just like get this inspiration of like, God, I need to finally finish Dark Souls, and maybe someday I will achieve that. But these kind of discussions remind me what's so exciting about really investing yourselves in one of these games.
Yeah. Happy to do that. It works. That's part of why it works for us, and. We really want to share that. If people are looking for you online, where can they find you or find your work?
Yeah, you can just follow me on Twitter. I'm at Fulbright, FULLBRIGHT. Or you can search Gone Home Game, or Tacoma is our new game. We've got websites up for those, and we've been lucky to get a bunch of like press coverage and stuff. So there's pretty good amount of information out there about Tacoma now. So yeah, give it a look. I'd appreciate it.
Yeah. Can I make a recommendation on your behalf?
Oh, by all means.
People who are listening to this like podcasts. I would recommend people go and listen to Tone Control. That is a series that you did. I'm telling you. But that is a series of developer interviews that Steve did on the Idle Thumbs Network with people like Brandon Chung and Tom Francis. Those are like two really good episodes, but like all the way up to like Tim Schafer and Clint Hawking. Like those are really great conversations. And they're evergreen. So I would recommend people find that.
Yeah, you can go to idlethumbs.net/tone control. And I did one season of those after we finished Gone Home. I talked to 14 other, there were 14 episodes. A couple of them I was talking to two people like Greg Kasavin and Amir Rao from Supergiant talking about Bastion and stuff. And I am hoping and planning to do another season after we finish Tacoma. So awesome. Fingers crossed, about a year or so from now, there will be some more episodes of that going up.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you.
Absolutely, man.
All right.
Cheers. Well, take care. So we let Steve off the hook before we did our boring admin stuff. But yeah, we said it to him on air, but for now he's not really here, so we're telling the truth. What a goddamn delight! And also just like he's made one of my favorite games, and it was just a very he's actually a friend of mine, which is how I met him in real life, and was able to kind of reach out to him, and I'm just really happy I did. I feel very lucky. Yeah. Be able to do this show and have him and people like him on it. Yeah,
we've been very fortunate, to have somebody like him on here talking about the indirect storytelling in these areas. I almost sarcastically said, "Now, indirect storytelling, Steve, what's that?"
Yeah. What would you know about that? About environmental storytelling.
What gives you the right?
Yeah. So it is, and the everything, all of the praise when I was talking about my ridiculous amount of sugar I've talked about, it was all genuine. Like, if anybody's listening to this and they don't follow Steve on Twitter or haven't played Gone Home or Minerva's Den, which like I'm angling to get on the Wikipedia as like the most fervent defender of BioShock 2, and Minerva's Den is a big reason why, because it's really great. He did really amazing work and continues to do really, really amazing work. Like, Tacoma is probably my most anticipated indie game, up there with like Afterbirth.
No, for sure, he does important and beautiful work, and that sounds like I'm being facetious. I am totally not.
What are we doing next time, Cole?
Gary, next time we have a special episode after the appendix for this, where we're talking about H.P. Lovecraft.
Indeed.
We're right in the middle of Lovecraft country for this, and this is a good time to do it because it'll be around Halloween.
Yeah, and Lovecraft is so we're gonna he's cast a huge shadow over really like a lot of modern horror, but specifically Bloodborne. So we're going to talk about some of those themes in general a little bit, but we're going to talk about 3 specific stories during that. And people who follow me on Twitter or on Slack or anything know how evangelical I am about the H.P. Lovecraft Literary Podcast. It's not going to be a retread of that. We're going to talk about these stories in kind of briefer form and then also tie them into Bloodborne.
Yeah.
So those 3 stories are The Color Out of Space, The Call of Cthulhu, and From Beyond. 3, and it was difficult paring those down.
Yeah.
Like there is a little bit of like every major Lovecraft story, there's a little bit of it in Bloodborne.
Yeah.
I can say with not really, like that's not really an exaggeration. So these were the 3 most kind of pertinent ones. And they're really good too. So if I can bring anybody to these stories, I'm happy to do so.
Yeah, so those are mostly in the public domain, I think. You can also...
they're all... You can read every Lovecraft story online.
Yeah.
So everything's in the public domain.
The next mainline Bloodborne episode that we're going to do after that is going to be about the Nightmare of Mensis. So we alluded to that transition at the end of this, but you're going to get that with us. Gary, do we want to announce the guest, or do we want to wait a little bit?
The guest is going to be... It's 2 people are going to be on that episode, which is our first for, or not first for us. We've had the Twin Humanities.
Yeah.
It is going to be David Plavis from he works for Riot Games. We had him on last season, and he's a delight. And joining us as well is going to be Scott Benson, aka at Bombsfall on Twitter. 2 consummate bros, and who really happy to have out. Scott Benson's done a lot of Dark Souls fan art. Stuff. The really adorable Nito gif. Walking to the right is him.
So excited about that.
And he's you may know him from Night in the Woods, which is the game he's working on. But he's a delight, and they're both unrepentant goofballs, which you guys will remember from last season. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. It'll be a good time. So further admin stuff for the show. You're probably, if you're listening to this, out of time to participate in the Bonfireside Cats campaign. That is a benefit t-shirt that we've been selling to help Gary out of a tough spot. That'll be ending on October the 11th, the day this comes out. So if you're listening to it the day of and you still haven't bought one of these shirts, go ahead and do that, and that helps Gary out.
Yeah, you can rush there. And if you go to that website, it tells you what's going on. And there's kind of a silver lining to that, possibly. Like, that might be being fixed, but it wouldn't be without people helping out. So thank you guys very much. I really appreciate it. Other than that, you can always join us on Patreon at patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv. Ratings, reviews, blogging it, tweeting it, doing it well. Yeah. All of those things are appreciated.
Yeah.
So, and what should they do until next time, Cole?
They should seek the nightmare newborn.
And silence its harrowing cry.
And we all pray that we will have far more soon.
Baby.